step 7, and that is post-employee experience. How to manage alumni as a long-term brand ambassadors. I think the core message here is that, it's very, very tightly connected to iGaming and FinTech. That the reputation, company reputation is very often shaped by people who leave us and what they say. And what they say is dependent on how they have been treated in the company, what was their experience. And this is just as important as bringing people in. And the question here that we will discuss is, why can a strong, good goodbye policy turn former employees into one of the most effective talent pipelines a company has?
So, shall I give my view while?
Sure.
I know that Andrew personally and professionally holds this very, very dear to him. But yeah, look, my view would be, why is that policy having a positive goodbye when you can important? Because they, as you said, they become the advocates. They become the one, and iGaming is a huge industry, but it's very, very small.
Yes.
And people know people. And we've all seen that, I'm sure, whether it be across the technology space, operations, finance, HR, and talent, and so forth. And therefore, it takes one person to say something particularly negative around their experience of how they were treated whilst they were there, or how they were treated on the way out. And that damage is very, very hard to retrieve, I think.
I 100% agree. And I think that, of course, like you've mentioned, whenever we can, sometimes there are situations that we cannot have a good goodbye, and these things happen. But where we can, I think it's important that we part ways with employees on good terms, because you never know, they may come back also.
Actually, yes.
And I have an employee who left us in August, and she is coming back to us at the end of this month, and this is very exciting, and I'm welcoming her with open arms. She was a great a talent acquisition specialist, and she is, and she's decided to come back, and it really speaks volumes to me about our culture in our business, the culture that we create as managers as well in our teams, about our employer brand, which we will discuss. And I know that Andy also has a lot to say in that topic. So for sure, I think that this is a whole separate talent pool, and that we can tap into if done correctly.
And just to add, Natalia, we've had 3 people in the last 8 or 9 months that have come back to our group, having left positively, 1 in HR and 2 recruiters. And they've tried 1 for 4 years, 1 for 1 year, 1 for about 1.5 years. But the point is, they were good when they were here. They wanted to come back for all of the right reasons, and it was a delight to have them back, because they were positive assets when they were here. So that's great. I love the fact that they came back to us and said, "Hey, could I come back?"
Right? Yeah.
A great success story, completely.
Yeah.
Sometimes they choose, sweet water, small lakes.
We're sticking to the fish.
Yes.
Analogy,
but then returns to our
swim
very
back
welcoming
to our pond.
sea.
Yes.
Yes.
Welcoming sea. Yes. Yes, they do.
We're going to have to choose a different theme for every one of these. You realise that? We're going to have to sort of stick with it.
Use different. Yeah, we'll use different analogies for sure.
Yeah. Let's use cactuses.
Andy, what would you like to add here?
Well, look, I would offer that I think in general most employees have relatively short memories. They're goldfish, if we're going down that, if that's going to keep to that analogy. therefore their last experience will be the one that they remember. You know, not that will look, if their time with an organization is, you know, is generally a poor experience, you know, a good exit is not going to gloss over that completely. But I do think that, you know, I think there's a lot that's been covered. The world is a small place. You know, there are a lot of people that return to organizations, particularly in iGaming, if iGaming experience is necessary. You know, I think there's no point trying to exit someone well if you didn't onboard them well and you weren't consistent through the process. And I think the danger here is that we look upon an exit as a, you know, entirely different strategy to every other engagement with that person throughout their time. You know, from the first point that the company brand is raised with them, you know, this is an exercise in employer branding. You know, that's what drives reputation in the market. That's what drives reputational risk, operational risk, and so forth. And you know, I think, you know, organizations don't think hard enough about this sort of thing. I think it's incredibly important, you know, moving forward, that, you know, someone's, from the first time that the company name is raised with somebody to the point in which they exit, you know, their experience is entirely consistent.
Definitely, and I think,
and positively consistent. Sorry.
Yes, exactly. So I think it's important to mention that consistency is a positive consistency.
Correct.
And, you know, not to forget that the employee journey does not end at the exit. It continues in the market, in the network, and in our reputation as an employer. And I think this is so important to remember, because too often I see managers being angry that they, you know, somebody's leaving and, oh, I have to find replacement, or, oh, this is going to damage our, you know, workflow and workload and so on. And it's frustrating, of course, because from a hiring manager perspective, you invest, like we've mentioned earlier, you invest time, you invest money, you invest resources into growing this person, developing this person, making sure that they are successful. And, you know, one day, a day comes where they say, I need to move on. And it's so important not to take not to let your feelings, your personal feelings, get the better of you and be frustrated at this, but actually think of it as, okay, we had a good run. You were great. If you decide to come back, the door is always open. You know, and this good transition out, this positive transition out, truly ensures that this person will say wonderful things about their employer even when they leave.